Ready, Hollywood?
Yes. Hey
guys, Basil from Grayson Hobby, and today we're going to show you how to take your awesome Diatone GT90 and install a Spektrum compatible receiver.
Yep, to run your DX something radio.
DX.
I'm gonna show you the Longbow receiver install, how to mount it to the quad inside the quad, and also configure it on Betaflight to make the Spektrum receiver communicate with the flight controller.
Right.
A lot of guys been asking that question, so they're not sure how to run that. So here's a little quick video on the basic install of it.
And then we're going to show.
Additionally, we'll also show you guys for the 3.3 receivers, if you guys are running the 4648s or traditional Spektrum satellite.
Those are 3 volts.
These are 3.3 volt. So we'll also show you how to install those as well, which does require some changing of the solder pads on the board.
Yes, and that's a little more involved. So, all right, without further ado.
We have a couple different options for receiver here. This is gonna be the Spektrum for the most part. So the option is like you got regular satellite here. This is a Redcon, but a Spektrum satellite, normal one, traditional one. You could also do, Horizon's new 4648. The 4649 would actually wire up more like a Longbow. And this is a FlySky. Now this is not a DSM, this is a FlySky receiver, the FS82. But these two will wire up in the same positions. The only difference is what you'd select in the Betaflight app.
One that we don't have, is it worth a damn?
The 4649 is a great receiver. It's a telemetry receiver. It's kind of big for this application.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't know if I'd bother getting one for this install. I'm not going to install this receiver because it's kind of big. I'm not going to bother putting it on my quad. So, but if you're going to do the 4648 decased or a Spektrum, just a standard style satellite, like this is like a little Redcon satellite, a DSM, DSM2, DSMX satellite, to install it, I'm going to show you how to wire that up, but I'm not going to actually install it.
Because it doesn't fit, because look at the size difference.
It's big. You're going to have to mount it on the bottom where the battery is or something.
I mean, that is like not so big-o.
Yeah,
it's like...
both of these are kind of a lot of work to do, to be honest with you. I'm just running mine with the little Longbow ones.
And you've been running yours with the Longbow for about a couple weeks now, right?
Well, I've run that receiver on a couple different quads now, the Baby Hawk and all that, so they've been working great for me. They're super small, they're light, and they run on a 5-volt source, so they're just easy to wire up.
Let's jump into it.
Let's get into that here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just take a Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm going to take the top plate off to make this easier to show you guys in the video. It's going to be 4 screws, the 2 front plate ones, and the 2 rear plate ones. Dirt on my quad, it's got fresh crashes on it. So. Alright, so when you take this off, be careful because your camera is still plugged in here. So I'm gonna get this.
So you're gonna, what are you doing there?
I'm gonna unplug my camera.
Okay, I see.
So the camera's there, and then I'm gonna run this out. I'm just gonna put this aside for now. I'm not gonna worry about taking the current sensor or the wiring out and all that. So now we have it to where we can work on the receiver. This is the factory installed receiver wiring that really doesn't work on anything but a horrible receiver. Hopefully they'll change that in future batches. I'm gonna recommend that to them. Go ahead and do is desolder this one because we're gonna use the wiring harnesses that come with either the Spektrum satellites or the Longbow or the FS82 receivers.
So again, what degrees?
I'm running 400. You do not need 400 degrees Celsius. You do not need to run anywhere near that high for
start around
micro wiring.
550 Fahrenheit for those who don't know.
If you have a small fine point tip, definitely a good time to use it with the small electronics. You don't want to bridge anything or damage anything. And actually, in this case, we're going to run 360 degrees Celsius, which I believe that's 700 degrees.
No idea.
I'm going to just go slowly desolder these connectors.
Looking good.
All right, so because this wiring harness, you could repin it and all that, but for the sake of making it easy, we're just gonna take the wiring harness that came with this. Now this
what did you say wire came with this?
This is the Longbow.
All right,
now if you have a Spektrum satellite, you'd use that. We'll go with that one. We'll go over that one next because that's a little different. This is gonna be easier one because this is a 5-volt receiver. If you guys have a traditional satellite or the 4648, these are 3.3 volt, not 5 volt. If you run 5 volts into them, they're dead.
And what is that, Longbow?
The Longbow is 5 volt. It actually has a regulator on the back of it, and you can see it says ground, 5 volt, and DSMX.
Yep.
And you'll see that, I believe, on, so you'll see that on the FS82 also. It'll say iBus, 5 volt, and ground as well.
So that one in your hand is for those who are running the FlySky.
Yeah, this is for FlySky.
So is 5 volt better versus 3 volt, or it's just the way it's set up?
It's easier because there's less, you don't have to change the solder pad or anything like that.
Do you get more range with a 5 volt?
No, it's just basically, this one has a regulator on the back of it. That's literally a 5 volt regulator to knock it down to 3.3.
So even though we're
whereas this doesn't
volts,
have one on it.
Gotcha. Even though we're sending it more voltage, just gonna.
The receiver's probably still running at 3.3 internally, but it's got a step down on it.
Gotcha. Cool.
There's a couple ways. We can either wire it up there and then move a wire there, or we can just run all 3 wires to the back side. I like to run the antenna facing the back, so I'm just planning on how much wiring I'm gonna need. So I'm just gonna do that. Give me a little extra wire. So that's probably what, about 1 inch of wire?
Well, let's do millimeters.
All right, millimeters. So,
looks like 35.
35 millimeters, or for those guys in the U.S. that are still not willing to change, 1.5 inches.
Or buy a new ruler.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut that across here.
At 35 millimeters.
Yeah. So this particular install, guys, is gonna again work for either the FS82 or the Longbow receivers. So I'm just gonna strip the wiring, and you don't need a lot of exposed lead on this one. Just because you can see the pads are so small, there's no point in having a ton of wire.
You have like a millimeter or 2 right there?
Yeah, just a little bit. Hold on, I'll show you. 2 millimeters or so, just a little bit, just for the solder pads there of exposed lead.
So you're gonna dip it in, flux.
And then I'm gonna tin the wiring.
And we all know what tinning is. We've learned that several times in our videos.
So now we got tinned wire. Now the options to do this here is we can use, let me get something to point with. So, right here is gonna be your ground. Right here, this was the black wire. That was the ground from the factory harness. The red one, which is currently at 5 volt, and then the very one on the end is the signal line. That's gonna be either S-Bus or PPM. Now, if you were gonna run a regular Spectrum satellite, there's a solder bridge we'd have to change here. But since we're running a 5 volt, we don't need to worry about that. In fact, because we are running 5 volt, we're not gonna use any of these wires here because they're gonna be on the outside. Let's tuck them in back here. So this one right here is gonna be your RX6, which is gonna be your receiving for the UART port. That's the communication port for the Spectrum serial receiver, or FlySky as well. So you're gonna solder to this one here. And then you're not gonna do the next one, but the one after that is gonna be your 5 volt, and the one after that is gonna be your ground. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tin this one, and this one, so you guys can see where we're gonna be doing that.
So now we're tinning the ones you just talked about.
Now we're gonna take our freshly tinned harness here, and we're gonna solder it up. Now you can run the wires out this way. If you're new at soldering, it's probably gonna be easier to do it that way. You can run it that way if you want to keep it nice and clean. I'm actually going to run them this way. So I'm going to turn this way.
So now the front is facing to my right.
This is the front of the quad right here. Clean off the iron.
That's very important. Oh,
yeah, when we're dealing with this little stuff, we're going to do the first one, which is ground. And you got to be careful because there's an LED right here. So if you're not, like I said, if you're not good with soldering, you may not want to do it this way. So we're going to just tin it there. Then we're going to do 5 volt. Which is the red lead. And then the signal, which is going to be this yellow wire in this case. So there's our 3 wires.
So you said if you weren't good, you wouldn't do this way.
Yeah,
in direction. Right?
Yeah, I would run. See how this one's wiring? The wiring is going outwards. That's easier to solder.
Okay.
I'm doing it this way because it keeps it clean and it keeps it away from all stuff.
If you're new, just do it that way.
Yeah, do you want me to do it the other way?
Nope.
Basically, from here, we would just put it back together, install a receiver and all that.
All right. And what do you mean install the receiver? I just see 3 wires.
Plug in, set receiver. So we're gonna...
I thought it was magic. All right, so now we have our Longbow. We have our shrink tube. We have our screws that are falling off our tray. And what's next step?
So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the shrink tube, we're gonna install the shrink tube on the receiver. So once that's shrunk,
put it in there and then heat it up, right?
Yeah, we're gonna put it in there and take your heat gun, heat it up, and shrink it. Then we're gonna put the quad back together.
All right, so now you're going to reassemble the quad without the receiver installed? Is that the way you do it?
I'm gonna go ahead and put it together because that way I know exactly where the receiver's gotta go.
Right.
Plug our camera back in,
So that's probably the hardest part of the whole install right there, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And I would say put all the screws in before tightening anything down.
Yes.
That way it lines up easier. Wires coming through the top here. We got our Longbow receiver. I'm gonna plug in here. And now, and again, this is where we could be using either the Spectrum, and for you guys running FlySky, but run it here the same way. So if you're using FlySky, you would use this in this case, but in this instance, we're using the Longbow DSMX. So we're gonna plug it in, we got it there. And what we're gonna do is get a little piece of double-sided tape. This is Scotch Extreme. 3M makes pretty much the same stuff. Use the good sticky stuff, not like really crappy double-sided tape, because you don't want it flying off while you're, well, flying. Put it on the back.
Now, the question I have is, where actually do you put this in?
On this quad?
Yeah.
All right, so we got our backing.
And do you replace that tape every once in a while?
If you get a lot of dirt, maybe. If the receiver starts falling off, yeah, replace the tape. But,
okay, so it's not a one and done. Monitor it, maintain.
Yeah, well,
maintain.
Sure, we'll go with that. Really,
Frame there.
I'm sticking it down on the top, and one thing you want to keep up with is not letting the receiver touch the side plate of the frame, because we are mounting on the flight controller. The whole point of this flight controller is it's soft mounted, it's isolated from everything else. So we want to make sure, one, the plug is not backed up to the camera here, and the board is not touching the side plates here. So I got it in a spot to where I like it. The other thing to keep up with it, bootloader button right there. We don't want to mount it to where it's pushing the button down. So I'm going to basically put it right next to it. If you're worried about it, you can kind of double-sided tape 2 layers, or put a little cut out the double-sided tape in that area so it doesn't push it.
So double-sided, that's raise it up above the button.
Yeah, but you got to make sure it's not touching the frame.
Right.
I mean, it can touch if you have to, but it's best to not
touch the frame.
because you're going to transmit vibration.
Because yours not touching the frame, right?
No, I mean, I got this installed.
We can do it, you can do it. What about the antenna?
The antenna, I just point it up.
All right.
That's all I gotta do.
That one's nice and small. So
Yeah, this is a short antenna.
How's the range on that one?
Pretty good. I've flown it. I mean, these are micros. I'm not trying to go a mile away. Yeah, it's got an 800 milliwatt capable VTX, but if I'm gonna fly in a big area like that, I'm gonna fly my 5-inch quad. The whole point of these is to be able to fly in the parking lot, fly in areas where you can't get away with 5-inch quads.
And it's far enough, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've gone around the building and all that.
Yeah.
So, and now we're gonna hook it up to the computer and bind it.
All right, so now what?
All right, so now that we have the hardware installed, we do need to make a couple changes. Otherwise, it won't do any binding procedure. So we're gonna have to plug into the computer here.
Without props, without
no battery.
All right, so you plug it into the USB port and voila.
So first thing we're gonna do is when you first connect, it'll go there. We're gonna click the ports button here, and then see where it says UART1 and serial RX. We need to turn that off.
Okay.
And then UART6, which was RX6 is where we soldered to, we're gonna have to turn that on. And that's serial RX. Serial RX UART6. Turn that on. Then we're gonna hit save and reboot.
Okay, it's gonna go boot oop and then go boop up.
Yeah, and then if you have auto connect on, it'd reconnect. I don't. Okay, so now we're gonna check that real quick. Yep,
so it's confirming our saved status.
And then we're gonna go to configuration as the next step. So the one under it. Click that, and then we're gonna scroll down. And where it says receiver, it says S-Bus. We're not going to use that. We are going to click that, and we are going to use Spectrum 48, 2048. Don't use that one. Even if you have a DSM-2 radio, use the Spectrum 2048.
All right.
The Longbows, not sure why, they just don't work with the 1024.
Gotcha. So do 2048.
But they still bind DSM-2, which is ironic. All right, so the 2048.
So hit
then
save.
We're going to hit save and reboot.
Yep. Disconnects. So we get reconnect.
And then we want to verify. Always verify when you're changing the stuff. For some reason, Betaflight occasionally will have a habit of not saving.
There it is.
So 2048 serial receiver.
Trust but verify.
So again, UART6, the way we wired it up, and Spectrum 2048.
Got it. So is it bound yet?
No, it's not bound. Do you want to bind it?
Let's bind it.
All right, let's bind it. All right, so again, no batteries, no props. We are gonna go to CLI.
Hold on, where is that?
At the bottom.
Okay.
Click that. Now we're gonna type the word set, S-E-T, space, B-I-N-D.
Set bind.
Hit enter. Then highlight this first line right here. It says Spectrum underscore set underscore bind space equals 0.
So you hit Control C.
Control C to copy.
All right.
Now, if you're old school, you can right click and then hit copy. Or you can just hit Control C.
Control C works for me.
Go down to the bottom here.
Okay.
Type the word set again.
Okay.
Hit space and then Control V. Now delete the 0.
Okay.
And hit the number 9. Then hit enter. So set Spectrum Sat 9, and you'll see it confirms it right there.
All right, is it, so then what?
Now we have to type the word save.
Hold on, let me get it. All right, so see save.
Then we hit enter again, and then it will reboot. Now, because the receiver doesn't have any power without a battery, we can't just plug in a battery. We actually have to unplug the USB port, otherwise it'll never take effect because it's on the next power up.
All right, unplug.
So the flight controller is unpowered, everything's off. I got my battery here,
No props still.
no props. Always for safety, no props. Then we're gonna plug in the battery.
Probably can fly without props too.
You'll see the light flashing. The light flashing is bind mode.
All right.
You're gonna take your radio. Let's see.
And you have to be like a foot or two, or a meter or two.
Yeah, let me go into the right model here.
All right.
Okay, so now we're gonna bind it, and being that close, it's not gonna bind for some reason.
Right.
Spectrum. I'm gonna go about 5-6 feet away, and I'm gonna hit the bind button, and you'll see it start slowly flashing, and then
Yep.
go solid, and it says DSMX 22 milliseconds.
Bind complete.
Boom.
And for those with DX6Is,
Yeah, if you got the older radios, they're not going to tell you that. You'll see the light go slow and then go solid, and then it's bound.
Get a new
Once
radio.
you do that, I always unplug and then
unplug and power back up.
and you'll see it solid.
All right, now how do we verify? Trust but verify. Remember, beta flight.
Well, then again, props off.
Battery plugged in this time.
Battery plugged in,
And so with our
Plug in the
USB port,
USB.
it still goes up and around. And
and we'll connect there. And then we're going to go to our receiver tab and see the stuff move around. Now, the last thing to do, guys, is because we're running Spectrum, we're not running the traditional channel mapping. We
Okay.
are not running. This is what it's going to come with.
mm-hmm.
We have to click this, and then we have to change it to Spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that magical Spectrum word right there.
Yep.
Then we're gonna hit save,
Okay.
and then these are gonna change to where now when I give it throttle, throttle's moving. Otherwise, aileron's gonna be moving when you move
Right.
throttle, and nothing's gonna work. Now you also have to, quick refresher for everybody that's really new and shouldn't have bought this one first, but they did anyway. You're gonna have to reverse channel 2 and 4. So I'm gonna show you on my radio again.
You're a DX6i, you're on your own.
Channel 2, which is roll in this case, and channel 4, which is yaw. I'm reversing those two. And then I'm also gonna set my my travel to about 145, 150, somewhere between 145, 150, depending on the radio, depending on its set. In this case, I end up being around there on these settings to get my 1,000, 2,000 range, which I could probably do a little more adjustments there. But you're gonna basically need to max out your travel adjustment for the first 4 channels on Spectrum. So if you have a DX6i, I think it's 125. If you got some of the older, like DX7s, I think they're 125. The newer radios are typically start about 145 and go from there.
What about a DXE?
A DXE,
Get a new radio.
get a new radio. Get a Taranis.
Yeah.
All right, so
And then watch the other video.
Yeah. There is a way to do it with DXE, but there's other videos. Dig back in the history of our videos and you'll find it. All right, so that's that right there.
That's it.
So make sure when you move the sticks to the bottom corners,
Now you
see
have to.
1000s. When you go to the top right corners, you see around 2000. Okay? So again, top right.
Hold on, just do one at a time.
Look, top right 2000. It's just easier to explain this way.
All right.
So you should see 2000-ish. Bottom left, 1000-ish.
Ish.
You do not want to see like 1100. Like you don't. If you see this, like over here, you didn't go high enough rates. If you see over, here, you didn't go high enough rates.
Right.
So, funny story. It says it right here.
All right.
1000, 2000.
Here we go. All right. Well, we mentioned FlySky.
We did mention FlySky in this. I know it's a Spectrum install, but I wanted to put that out there for you guys running the FS82 receivers or iBus.
So those who bought a Wizard, right?
Yeah, if you have a Wizard, if you're running a FlySky radio, something like that, if you have one of the little micro FS82s, if you want to run FlySky on the Diatone, you're going to do the exact same install as the Longbow receiver. The only difference is you will go through on the Betaflight setup, you're going to change instead, the only thing you're going to do different is instead of the Spectrum 2048 selection, you're going to select iBus and save. You will not need to change the channel mapping, which is that last part we did in the configuration. You won't need to change that. You'll leave it on the default. So literally, there's one thing you're going to click and change from the Spectrum install, and you're good to go. And then you'll set it up like normal. So If you guys asking about that,
Well, do I have to do the bind, set spectrum bind?
no, you will push a button to bind it.
Well, that's two things you have to do different.
That's all there is to
That's it. So if you have any questions on that one, leave them. Yep.
Or the simple answer is just buy a Tyrannus or a Spectrum
Yeah.
radio.
So if you can't figure that out, buy a
Tyrannus.
Tyrannus Radio QX7s. We got plenty of them over here somewhere. Yep.
Is that a shameless plug on that one? That's
No,
a shameless
it's not.
plug.
It's just easier.